Thank you.
All right, folks, switching gears. Joining me now is John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Justice Department and still, as far as I know, a professor of law at the University of California at Berkeley. John Yoo, welcome. So the Supremes are going to rule something with IEPA, the International Economic Emergency Policy Act. We have a little tape from Mr. Trump about the importance of this effort. Take a listen, please, John.
What happens to your economic plan if the Supreme Court invalidates your tariffs?
I think our country will be immeasurably hurt. I think our economy will go to hell. I think it's the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years.
All right, very strong stuff. So, John Yoo, what do you think about this story?
This is the first of what's going to be a series of challenges to presidential power in the Supreme Court term. I can see this going 50-50. There's two questions here. Is the trade deficit so large and so pressing that it's a national emergency? You called it, Larry, it's the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. Is this an emergency? And then the second question is, if there is an emergency, can the president use that law to impose what's essentially a tax on imports? I have a strong suspicion the president is going to lose on the first question and win on the second question. I don't think the trade deficit, which has been with us since, Larry, since you've been in the White House and before, since you've been on Fox News, it's been with us since the Nixon years. And it's the same size as a percentage of GDP now as it was 20 years ago. Goes up and down, but it's basically been flat. Does that sound like an emergency? Now, the Supreme Court's never told us what an emergency is or isn't. It's never faced that question. That's why this could be one of the most important questions in the history of the Supreme Court. The next thing is I think the justices are going to be worried about what happens if they do say it's an emergency. What happens in a progressive administration when they say climate change is an emergency and that justifies all kinds of federal takeovers of the economy?
Well,
I think that's really the core of the question.
They did say climate change was an emergency. They just got stopped from taking over the economy by a couple of good votes. But let me ask you something. There's two issues here, though. One is $300 billion in tariff revenues would have to be turned back. All right, it's going to be about $300 billion for calendar 2025. I don't know how you do that. The second one, John, is foreign policy. The commander-in-chief, right, has the play on foreign policy. Mr. Trump has used IEPA and the tariffs embodied therein to conduct foreign policy in a number of key places. There are security agreements, defense purchases. You know, I'm sure you followed his latest trip, for example, with Australia and Japan and Vietnam and Malaysia and even Cambodia. There's a lot of, and China, but for those, there's a lot of foreign policy engaged. And I think the president would say that IEPA and tariffs are part and parcel of his conduct of foreign policy, which is reserved for the commander-in-chief. What do you make of that one?
That's music to my ears. Those are the best arguments possible. And I think that if President Trump were to come back to the court with targeted tariffs, targeted at China, Mexico, right, targeted at Iran, Russia, North Korea, our rivals in the world, the countries that are attacking us, I think the Supreme Court would uphold those 9-0. The problem is that the tariffs are worldwide, that we're taxing our allies, Switzerland, for example, or France, as much as, or perhaps even more than some of our rivals. So I think you're right, Larry. As the closer the tariffs come to foreign policy, to national security, and Trump can say, this country here is a threat to us. And so we want to reduce or even cut off economic ties with them. He's going to win. The Supreme Court is very generous to the president when he says that.
That's what he's going to say.
The problem is worldwide tariffs are the problem.
Well, yes, but then again, there's a lot of segmentation. They're not only worldwide tariffs. Each country has got its own tariff and foreign affairs story, it seems to me. How about this? Last one, John, then we have to get out. But suppose the Supreme Court, the issue isn't whether, but how. In other words, the Supreme Court may say, okay, you've got this authority, but here's how we're going to parcel out this authority, implementing this authority. What do you make of that possibility?
That's a great point, Larry, because everyone should recognize the President Trump isn't here saying, I'm doing this under my constitutional power. This is power that Congress gave to the president for times of international emergencies. And so you could see the court, I think that's a good point, Larry, you could see the court saying, we're going to allow these to stand against some countries. Again, like China, like Mexico, but maybe other countries we're going to ask for more evidence, more showing of a national security need. And that might be enough for everybody to declare victory here, the Supreme Court and the president.
Heck, I'm not even a lawyer. I'm not even the Solicitor General. If it occurs to me, it's got to occur to all those big shots sitting on the high bench. But we'll talk some more about this.
If you show up at Berkeley, Larry, you show up at Berkeley, we're going to give you a degree in a day just to get you out of town.
I was just going to say, showing up at Berkeley is like one of the scariest thoughts I've had all day. But John Yoo, not you. We love having you, and we're glad you're still kicking. Anyway, former Justice Department lawyer John Yoo.